You often hear the phrase that life isn't fair, and I am living proof that it is true. But every now and then, life gives you a gift that helps make things a little easier. Again, I am living proof. I was an indifferent student. I wasn't poor, I had a B average, but I just didn't like school, so college wasn't in my future. I had never been more than 70 kilometers from the city I was born in, so one of the things I wanted to do was travel. Travel meant money, and money meant good jobs that paid well, and while there may have been plenty of jobs in our town, none of them paid well enough for me to do what I wanted. The day after high school, diploma in hand, I was waiting outside the Army recruiting office when the recruiter unlocked the door. I filled out a bunch of forms, and when they asked me what I would like to do, I indicated airborne troops, infantry, armored vehicles, and finally, artillery. 3 days later, I was sitting on a bus heading to Fort Knox, Kentucky for basic training. After basic, the Army looked at my list of options and decided I didn't really need any of it. So next on my travel itinerary was a trip to Fort Lee, Virginia, where I learned the basics of Army supply. I learned how to assemble boxes, pack supplies, and operate forklifts that load cargo onto trucks and rail cars to get it where it was needed. At the end of the course, I was given a list of places that required my military specialty and asked to mark my preferences in the order in which I would like to apply. I chose the UK, 2 places, Germany, 3 places, France, 1 place, Spain, 1 place, Italy, 2 places, and Hawaii. Naturally, an army is an army. They looked at my choices and decided that this wasn't really what I had in mind when I made those choices, so they sent me to Korea. I spent the next 16 months working as a supply clerk at the 55th Quartermaster Depot in Busan, Korea. This included a 6-week TDY temporary duty assignment in Yokohama, Japan, and a 3-week TDY in Seoul. The next stage of my trip around the world was a 12-month assignment at Fort Lewis, Washington, where I was to be stationed when my enlistment expired. 2 months before the end of my military service, I was not surprised when the first sergeant called me into his office and tried to gently persuade me to consider the Army as a career. I honestly told him that I didn't really think I wanted to do this, and he asked me why. I told him chapter and verse about how I ended up in the reserves instead of the choice I made when I enlisted, and in Korea when I chose the other side of the world when I was given a list to choose from. I told him that the Army just didn't seem to give a damn about me. Besides, I can't imagine packing and moving boxes in the next 20 years. I think I understand how you look at it, but you have to understand that the Army has to send people where they are needed. They needed people for supplies, and they thought you could do the job, so they sent you there. The same goes for the distribution of responsibilities. They place you where they think you will be the best fit. We need to supply more than packaging materials and loading machines. Someone has to manage the warehouses. Someone has to plan the movement of materials, keep track of inventory, order what's needed, and make sure it gets to where it's needed in a timely manner. Someone has to lead people. The list goes on and on. You become a corporal in 2 years, and most of them, if they become corporals at all, don't get promoted until near the end of their service, so your superiors obviously think you have what it takes. If you register now, I can guarantee you a spot in the next supply management class, and you should be enrolled in E5 by the end of the course. This man could sell sand to an Arab, and after another half-hour conversation, Uncle Sam took me in for another 3 years. The first sergeant tried his best to get me to take 6, but I was just a little incredulous. He made a few promises, but I've already seen that once you sign on the dotted line, the Army does what it wants. I would just wait and see what happens before committing myself to a 20-year career. Sergeant Ebers was frank with me. I was assigned to an 8-month supply management course at Fort Lee and reported back after 30 days leave. The course was not difficult, and I completed it with ease and finished in the top 5 in a class of 32 people. The next leg of my trip around the world was a 12-month assignment at Fort Hood, Texas, and 6 months into my stay there, I was promoted to E5 Staff Sergeant. I was then sent to Stuttgart, Moragen in Germany for a year, and during my holidays I was able to visit England, France, and Spain. We then returned to the U.S. for a tour of Fort Leonard Wood. Once again, 2 months after the end of my enlistment, I was in the first sergeant's office, where he did his best to convince me that my future lay with the green machine. But he lost the battle because this time I didn't buy it. I had 6 years to discover one of the fundamental truths of the Army, and it was that most officers at the rank of major and below, with the exception of 90% of West Pointers, were inadequate, screaming idiots, or both, simultaneously. The idiots from the Quartermaster Corporation. I firmly believe that supply was a dumping ground for officers who couldn't cut it in other departments. I've seen dozens of my fellow infantrymen end up in Section 15 chicken shit hearings and court-martials, usually because some brainless officer screwed up and blamed it on the nearest private. I've watched guys whose only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time while serving under an incompetent clown be sent to jail for anywhere from 90 days to a year. More than a year has passed and you've received an all-expenses-paid trip to Leavenworth. I knew it was only a matter of time before this happened to me. I told the authorities, "Thank you, but no, excuse me." For the past 2 months, I've been called into the first sergeant's office once a week for a promotional campaign. He even promised me E6 within 6 months, which I resisted, and then got fired and went home. I spent the first 2 weeks getting reacquainted with people I knew and looking for an apartment. As soon as I got settled, I went looking for a job. Surprisingly, the first company I approached hired me. It so happened that XYZ Industries simply needed someone in their shipping and receiving department, and one look at my military experience got me the job. I went to school with 2 guys who worked in the shipping industry, so I wasn't an outsider when I started. At the end of my first day at work, Sam and Dave asked me if I would like to come over to their place after work for a drink or two at the bar and a game of pool. I had nothing else to do, so I went. There were 3 or 4 other people there that I went to school with, so it was kind of a mini reunion. After that, I went to the Strip once or twice a week. One evening, Abba Costico asked me if I did anything on Wednesday nights, and when I told him no, he told me that the mixed league he was playing in needed substitute players. Wednesday night, I went to Starlight Lanes and checked in. I filled in for him for about 2 months, and then one of the guys from the Wilson Jewelers team got transferred out of state, and I was asked to take his place. The team consisted of Joe and Mary Moore, Phil and Sandy Burns, and me. I went to school with Joe and Mary, although her last name was Osterman back then. Phil and Sandy moved to town after I left on my world tour. I was amazed at the change in Mary. When we were at school, she was reserved and even a little timid. Now she was loud and outgoing, and there was something raunchy about her. She always asked me about my personal life, which, unfortunately, did not exist. I dated a few, but none of my dates escalated to what was supposed to happen, intimate behavior. Mary kept laughing and telling me that if I wanted to raise my GPA to 158, if anyone cared, then I needed to have more sex. I looked at Joe and he just shrugged his shoulders as if to say, "Hey, it's Mary. That's how she is. What can I say?" One night when I walked into the Strip after working with Sam and Dave, I saw Joe there hitting 8 balls with Arnie Miller. When Joe lost Sam, the next one to take on Arnie was Sam, and Joe came and sat next to me. As we finished our beers, curiosity got the better of me, and I asked Joe about the changes in Mary. How did she manage to lose so much weight compared to what she was before? I married her. Are you that strong a wizard? No, but by marrying me, she broke away from her family. Her father was a violent drunk, and her mother was just a run-of-the-mill drunk with no backbone, and she didn't stop her dad from abusing his children. I took her out of that house, and she blossomed. Bowling ended, and I signed up for the men's summer house league and returned to the mixed league in the fall as a member of Wilson's team. 3 weeks into the fall season, Joe and Mary showed up with a very beautiful young girl, and I was introduced to Mary's younger sister, Katie. "I'm trying to get her to go bowling," Mary said, "and I brought her here tonight to watch." It was a good evening for us. We took the first and third games and the total number of pins. And as we were putting away our balls and shoes, Mary told me that she was going to teach Katie to bowl starting next Saturday and asked me if I wanted to join them. I said I would. And to shorten the story a bit, I asked Katie out on a date, and even though I was 6 years older than her, she said yes. 6 months later, she said yes again when I proposed to her, and 3 months later, we were married. Katie had never had a man before me, but luckily, I wasn't one. I've had sex almost everywhere I've been, and with American, Spanish, French, German, English, and Oriental girls I've been with. I learned a lot and was glad that I could teach my fiancé everything I knew. Katie grabbed sex like a drunkard, grabs a bottle of alcohol, greedily. She had one but there was so much else that I didn't care. One day at work, I was asked to report to Jason Riley's office. Jason was the shipping and receiving manager, and as I sat there waiting to be let into his office, I went over in my head all the things I could do to get called on the carpet. It turned out that there was nothing wrong with this. XYZ Company purchased a program that was remarkably similar to what the Army used to control inventory and track procurement. As I recall from your initial interview, you were well aware of the use of the Army system. And although what we just purchased is not the exact same system, we were told that it was developed from the Army system. How would you feel about moving out of the warehouse? Just like that, I received a significant promotion and title. I was the head of the inventory control department. I took a huge amount of crap from Sam and Dave, who accused me of being crap, but I could tell it was good-natured. Katie wanted to wait a little while before having children, but she didn't want to sit at home all day watching soap operas until I got home from work, so she got a job as a waitress at a town and country restaurant. The next 5 years were quite successful, both at work and at home. Shortly after our 5th wedding anniversary, Katie began to lose interest in lovemaking. She never said no to me, but she never initiated it again. The days of her waiting for me at the front door in nothing but high heels were long gone, but Katie used to come pick me up a couple times a week, but that didn't happen anymore. I was racking my brain trying to figure out the reason for the change when Katie finally told me. We had just finished dinner and Katie said, "I want a divorce, Frank." Divorce? Why in the name of all that is holy do you want a divorce? What have I done? That's not what you did, Frank. I just don't love you anymore. And I'm sorry to say, but I don't know if I ever loved you. I really like you, but I think I only married you to get away from home, away from my father and mother. I sat and looked at her and remembered what Joe had said about Mary running away from her parents. Then the unspoken occurred to me. What you're really saying is that you found someone else that you think you really love. She looked away from me, and I asked, "How long has this been going on?" "It doesn't matter, Frank. This is important to me, Katie. How long have you been cheating on me? How long have you been stabbing me in the back? And who is this asshole? And don't try to tell me he's not an asshole. Men who prey on married women are assholes. Don't make things more complicated than necessary, to be frank. I don't love you, and I want to leave. I could have just pulled over while you were at work and asked to serve you, but I wanted to be honest and tell you about it face to face." "Bullshit, Katie. If you wanted to be honest, you would have told me about it before you started cheating. Do you want to get a divorce? Wonderful. Go and get a divorce. But now that I know what you are like, I want you to leave the apartment immediately. Right now, right this minute. I'll pack all your things and you can come and pick them up tomorrow when I get home from work." "Be reasonable, Frank. Where should I go urgently? We can coexist. I don't hate you, Frank. I just don't love you. Get out, Katie. Go and live with that asshole. He won't be in town until next week. You can only bear with me for so long. I could, but I won't. Live on the streets until he comes home. I don't care if you have to buy a cardboard box and live under the 12th Street underpass. Just get out now before I physically throw you out. Please, Frank, Out, Katie. Now." She started crying and saying, "Please, Frank, don't do this." And I stood up, took her hand and led her to the door. I opened it, pushed her out, and then closed the door and locked it. I went and found her purse, took the apartment key off her fob, took all the credit cards and ATM cards out of her wallet, and then went and opened the door and threw her purse out after her. She stood and begged me to let her back in, and I closed the door in her face. Was I unreasonable? Maybe. But she didn't just leave me. She cheated on me, and she had no forgiveness for it. I cleaned up the kitchen, and then, after making sure Katie wasn't waiting outside, I went to Home Depot to get a new front door lock and a similar deadbolt. I then rushed home to install them in case Kathy had a spare key somewhere. 2 hours later, the doorbell rang. I looked out the peephole and saw Mary and Joe standing there. I invited them in, offered them a beer, and then waited for what I knew was going to happen. Mary took a sip of beer and then said, "Katie called me and said you kicked her out. This is true? Did she tell you why? So you threw her out after all." "Yes, I did. But did she tell you why?" "Only that you threw her out and she had nowhere to stay." I told Joe and Mary the story, and Mary's face showed anger. For a second, I thought it was on me for kicking her sister out, but then she said, "That stupid, brainless little bitch." "I'm sorry, Frank. I came here to argue with you about the way you treated Katie, and now all I want to do is break her neck. Is there any chance that you two can work this out?" "None. Firstly, she said she didn't love me and wasn't sure she ever had, so I had nothing to fall back on to help me get over it. And secondly, she cheated on me with another man. This is something I cannot forgive, let alone forget." After Joe and Mary left, I finished the 3 beers left in the refrigerator and went to bed. After that, everything went quickly. I didn't wait for Katie to file for divorce. I hired a lawyer and filed an application. The condition was no fault of the guilty, so I could not declare infidelity even if I wanted to, which I did. Everything had to be divided equally, which didn't really matter since we didn't have anything significant. We weren't married long enough for Kathy to qualify for my pension, but I had to pay her alimony of $126 a week for 2 years, or until she remarried. Which comes first? What really pissed me off was that I put money into a special savings account for a down payment on a house, and I had to give Katie half of it, even though she never put a dime of what she earned into it. A week after I kicked her out the door, she moved in with a guy named Raymond Rydell. Being a somewhat vindictive person, one evening, about a month after I sued Kathy, I was waiting outside of town for Kathy to get home from work. Ray worked during the day at a box factory, so Kathy moved her work hours from afternoons to afternoons. Ray finished work at 12:30, and Kathy finished at midnight, so Ray would come to the restaurant and drink coffee until Kathy finished work. As they exited and headed toward his car, I stepped out of the shadows and addressed him. I expressed my outrage at his relationship with another man's wife. This was unacceptable from my point of view. I warned him of the possible consequences if he continued to behave this way. I then turned to Katie and expressed my disappointment in her behavior. After that, I went home. I expected that there might be some legal consequences, but there were none. Apparently, he decided not to take any action. A month after the divorce was final, Kathy moved out from Ray, and I wondered if she had suddenly decided that she didn't love him either, and if she had chosen another lover to replace him, as she had with me. I wondered, but not enough to try to find out. Katie was out of sight, and even Mary had no idea where she might have gone. 3 years have passed, and my work life has been wonderful. Jason retired, and I was promoted to his position. Personal life was fine. I dated a lot and slept with a lot of people, but I never found that one special girl to live with. On the first night of Fall League, Mary showed up without Joe. She went to talk to the league secretary, and as she turned into the side streets we were walking along, I asked her where Joe was. Joe left. I raised my eyebrows in surprise, and she noticed this and said, "I owe you an apology." "For what?" I asked. "For thinking you were an asshole for throwing Katie out. I just couldn't understand how you could suddenly turn your back on someone you'd lived with for so long. Now I know how you felt at that time." "Did he do it?" "Yes, he did it, and with my best friend." "I'm sorry, Mary. Me too. 11 years have been thrown down the drain. At least you didn't have children." After bowling, Mary and I went to a bar for a drink, and while we were talking, she said, "I don't know if this will make you feel good or angry, but I heard from Katie last month." I didn't say anything, and she continued, "She's unhappy, and she knows it's her own damn fault." About? She told me that her life has been worthless since she lost you. She said it was a case where she didn't realize what she had until it was gone. I shrugged and ordered us another portion. A month later, when we went to a bar for a beer after bowling, she asked, "Can you do the girl a favor?" "I believe. I need to get out of the house. Would you like to take me out to dinner?" "I think I can do it." I took her out to dinner on Saturday, and then she wanted to go to Black Mushroom for a drink. And then, of course, she wanted to dance, and we ended up closing the place. As I pulled out of the Mushroom parking lot, Mary said, "Do you know what would be the perfect ending to this evening?" "What?" "A guided tour of your bedroom." I didn't say anything, but my face must have read, "You can't be serious." "I'm nowhere near ready for a serious relationship, Frank, but I really, really need sex. Your desire is my law." Mary and I began a friends with benefits relationship that lasted almost 6 months. As we continued our relationship, Mary mentioned Katie from time to time and told me that Katie asked about me and how I was doing every time she called. "She knows she screwed up. You should call her." "No, thank you, Mary. I got burned once, blew twice. Besides, I don't even have her phone number and I have no idea where she is. I have her number." "Thank you, but no need." And then one night Mary said that this would be our last time. "I feel damn guilty fiddling around with you after talking to Katie and finding out how she felt about you." A month later, her company opened a new office in Dallas, and she moved there as office manager. One day I was having lunch with Dave and he asked me if I'd ever been to a sex party. "No! Why do you ask?" "I'm just wondering what it would be like." "Why are you asking such questions? Are you going to one of them?" "I would love to, but I don't dare. My wife can read me like an open book. If I did something like that, she would notice a change in me and would harass me until I spilled the beans. I don't think finding out what a party like this is like would be worth ruining my marriage over." "You're lonely. You could do it." "I wouldn't know how to find out where she might be." "My friend arranges this for a girl he knows who wants to celebrate her birthday. If you're interested, I could tell my friend about it. Is it okay if I give him your number?" I thought about it for maybe a second or two before telling him to go ahead. 2 days later, I got a call from Norm, Dave's friend. He asked me if I was really interested in joining him. I asked if he could tell me a little more about it. "There's not much to tell. She wants to do this for her birthday, which is next Thursday. We will do this at my house. She is not a woman of easy virtue. She's one hell of an attractive woman who's interested in sex with more than 1 or 2 guys. It's not that simple. Dave vouches for you. But she was very specific about the guys she wants. I need you to email me some photos. I need a picture of your face and your whole body. She won't see the photos or have any idea what the guys look like until the evening of the party. I will also need a certificate from a clinic or doctor confirming that you are free of prohibited substances and diseases." I did what he wanted, and 2 days later they called me and told me that I had been accepted. It's a funny thing. You are almost exactly what she described as desirable. He gave me his address and said the party would start at 7. On the day of the party, I had something coming up, so I told him I would be half an hour late. "One more thing," he said. "Today is her birthday and we will have a cakey. Bring her some kind of birthday present. She doesn't know about this part, so it will be a surprise." I got there at 7:20 and rang the doorbell. A naked man opened the door, introduced himself as Norm, and then asked to follow him to the basement where the party was taking place. We were almost at the bottom of the stairs leading to the basement when I heard Katie's voice. I stopped in my tracks, completely stunned. I grabbed Norm's arm, stopping him. Lowering my voice, I said, "I have a problem here." "What?" I recognized that voice when she asked who was next. "This is my ex-wife, Katie. My problem is that I don't want to ruin your party, but I don't want to miss this chance either. She would never let me do something. I've never had this before, and the reason I wanted to be here was because you said everything would be available. So I could try it. Now that I know it's Katie, I want it more than ever. I'm just afraid that when I walk in there and she sees me, she'll freak out and it'll ruin everyone. He looked at me for a few seconds and then asked, "Did you love her?" "Yes, it was so." "Do you see the blinking light above my head?" "What?" It just dawned on me why she was so specific in her description of the type of man she wanted here, and why you fit that description perfectly. She hasn't forgotten you. Bullshit. We've been divorced for over 4 years, and I haven't seen her for over 3. Then explain to me why the men she wanted to see here had to be like you. I can't. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We will make sure that she does not immediately understand that it is you. I bet when she sees it's you, she'll go crazy, but not to the point of crazy. I don't think you'll ruin the party at all. I think you are going to arrange a gift for her. Give me 5 minutes. I gave him 6 and left. I went down to the basement and did it, and then said, "Damn it, Katie. Why did you never give it to me when I did everything and even begged you for it?" She looked over her shoulder. Shock showed on her face as she exclaimed, "You!" "Yes, Katie, me. I did this." "Hey, man," one of the guys said, "she must really want what you have." I noticed Norm was smiling and had an "I told you so" look on his face. All I could do was shrug. Let's talk about the strange. 5 naked guys and 1 naked woman stand around eating birthday cake. Can you imagine it? Norm said it was time to open presents and sat Katie down in a chair while we stood in a semicircle in front of her. One guy gave her a set of panties and a bra from Victoria's Secret, and another gave her a bottle of some expensive perfume. Norm gave her a full day of special treatments at the spa, and the 4th guy gave her a gift certificate to the most expensive restaurant in town. When it was my turn, I was embarrassed because what I gave her was completely different from what others had given her. I almost reached into my wallet to pull out a $100 bill and give it to her, but of course I couldn't actually do that. It would look like I was paying a woman for sex. I swallowed it and said, "I thought for a long time about what to give to a woman I didn't even know. And in the end, I decided that maybe what I needed was something appropriate for the birthday, as well as what kind of birthday it was. Birthday party." I handed Katie the gift wrap, and she opened it. She looked at me and then back at what was in the box and said, "It's perfect. It's just perfect." She stood up, came up to me and said, "Put this on me." I took a silver chain with a silver pendant with the number 5 hanging from it and put it around her neck. "Now it's different," she said, returning to her chair and sitting down. She lifted her right leg and stretched it out in front of her, and I knelt down and took a silver ankle bracelet out of the box and put it on her. The bracelet had 5 small charms and 5 letters hanging from it. Norm came and stood next to me and watched. A little later he said, "I'll miss her." "Miss her? After tonight, I doubt she'll want to stay with me." "Is she your wife or girlfriend?" "No, she lives with me, sort of like friends with benefits." "Are you kicking her out because of what she's doing tonight?" "No, of course not. She's never done anything like this before, and I sincerely doubt she'll ever do it again. It was a fantasy that she wanted to bring to life. She's just not the type to want to do it more than once." "So why will you miss her?" "You really don't know? You really don't know?" "I'm afraid not. She's yours, Frank. Everyone here tonight knows this. From the moment she saw you, everyone else has ceased to exist for her. She knew that we were here physically, but mentally, there was no one here except you." "Bullshit. This is the woman who looked me straight in the eye and told me she didn't love me and wasn't sure she ever truly loved me, and then left me for another man. I don't know anything about that, but I do know that when she told me what type of man she'd like to see here tonight, she described you. And I also know that she hasn't been able to take her eyes off you since you showed up here. Look at her, Frank." It was true. She looked at me, and I had already noticed that she looked at me often during the evening. "I don't think it means anything, Norm. I think she's just worried that I'm here. She's probably worried that I'll tell all her family and friends about what she's doing tonight." "Never. I know her quite well and can read her thoughts. She belongs to you, Frank. Whether you realize it or not, she is yours." I knew this was bullshit. I still remembered that night when she said, "I just don't love you anymore, and I'm sorry to say, but I don't know if I ever loved you." "No, She was just worried about what I might say and to whom. The party began to disperse around 2. I got dressed, but before I could leave, Norm grabbed me and asked me to help him clean up the apartment a little. The others left before I could ask them, and I don't think Katie should be cleaning up after her own party. I helped him clean up, and then he said he had something he wanted to show me in the basement. I followed him down and asked him what he wanted me to look at. Nothing really. Katie asked me to hold you until she gets dressed. For what? I already told you. I just shook my head and walked back up the stairs. When I entered the kitchen, Katie was standing there. Can I go home with you? Please. I stood there staring at her, not knowing what to say. Please, Frank, please. Norm came up behind me and said, Do it, man. What do you have to lose? Katie stood and looked at me hopefully. Don't ask me why, because I honestly don't know. But I said, Okay. In the car, Katie slid next to me and rested her head on my shoulder, but she didn't say a word the entire car ride. I was silent because I was busy asking myself if I knew what the hell I was doing. When we got to my house, she followed me inside and headed straight to the bedroom. When I got there, she was already lying on the bed. Sorry, but I have nothing left. I don't care. What I want is to be hugged. Please, Frank, hold me. What the hell? I thought. $1 for 10 cents. I climbed onto the bed, hugged her, and we fell asleep. In the morning, we made love again. She looked me straight in the eye as she said, Could you get used to this? I looked at her and wondered what the hell was going on with her. First, the way she acted last night, the desire to go home with me, and now the question, could you get used to this? She read the expression on my face and said, Tell me, baby, would you like your every morning to start like this? Stupid question, I thought. What man wouldn't like to start his day like this? She hugged me so that I couldn't pull away, looked into my eyes and asked in a plaintive voice, Can I stay? Do you want to stay? Why in the name of all that is holy do you want to stay? As I remember, Katie, you couldn't wait to get out of there. And it was the biggest mistake of my life. I don't know what to say, Katie, but anyway, I have to go to work now. And I pulled away from her and stood up. She was still lying on the bed when I got out of the shower, and as I started getting socks and underwear from the dresser, she said, Can I stay and at least talk to you when you get home tonight? I remembered everything Mary had said, and what Norm had told me at the party, and curiosity got the better of me, so I told her she could stay until then, and then I went to work and spent the day wondering, why the hell did I say yes? When I returned home, I was surprised to find that Katie had prepared dinner and was waiting for me. She even had a chilled bottle of Merlot ready to pour. We watched each other as we ate, and then I couldn't hold it in any longer. I put down my fork and said, What's going on here, Katie? What are you doing? I want to go home, Frank. This is not your home, Katie, and hasn't been for many years. In my mind, this has always been my home. Just a home that I couldn't return to because I let myself be stupid. I don't understand, Katie. Not even 2 weeks had passed since I left here when I realized that I had screwed up. I left not because I didn't love you, but because I thought you didn't love me. Why the hell did you think that? One evening, I overheard Mary and Joe talking about how they wanted to take me away from my parents, and I heard Joe tell Mary that they could probably trick you into doing it. Joe told Mary that you were the kind of idiot who could be relied upon to save puppies and little kittens. He told her that all she had to do was get us together, tell you how lousy things were at home, and you'd be soft-hearted enough to do the rest. They invited us bowling, and you did exactly what Joe said. Did you really think that I would marry you, even if I didn't love you, just to save you? You did it. You did exactly what Joe said. At that moment, I was a puppy. I loved being married to you, but after a while, I began to feel guilty that I tied you to someone you were with only because you saw the need to save her. When Ray came for me, I thought he really cared about me, and I liked him, but I didn't love him. Like I loved you, but he seemed to love me. So I went with him, so you could be free from me. I do not believe in this. Why didn't you tell me this instead of telling me that you don't love me and want a divorcee? I wanted to do it quickly so I could start recovering from the pain. You not talking to me ruined my life, Katie. I don't understand anything. Why did you get the idea that I don't love you? The only true part of your story is that Joe and Mary took you to bowling. Mary never told me about your life at home with your parents. I married you, Katie, because I loved you, not because I rescued puppies or kittens. You tore my heart when you told me that not only did you not love me, but that you didn't think you ever did. You tore my heart out and threw it on the ground and then drove a stake through it when you let me know you'd already cheated on me with Ray. It was not true. I haven't done anything with Ray yet. I only let you think that way so you wouldn't resist me. Ray was also a mistake. All he wanted to do was have sex. By the time I realized this and realized how stupid I was for leaving you, it was too late to try to come back. I spent 5 years trying to find what I had with you and never even came close. I saw you from time to time, and I was torn to pieces. I even left so as not to meet with you anymore. She was silent for a while, and then said, I beg you to take me back, Frank. I don't think so, Katie. I loved you, and the truth is, I probably never really got over you, but the woman I loved and missed is not the same woman I saw last night. I'm actually not the same woman you saw last night. This was my first time in my life, and, with the exception of your role in it, I didn't really like it all. I enjoy sex, and I enjoy sex with someone who makes sure I get something out of it, but last night I just felt like a piece of meat being worked over by a pack of dogs. Then why did you do it? Because I've never done this and I was curious. I have 2 friends who have done this and they both told me it was the best sex they've ever had and that I owe it to myself to try it. Norm thought I might like it too, so I let him talk me into it. I told him to arrange it for my birthday. Would it matter if I wasn't there? Did it change for you when you saw that I saw what you were doing? Would you have enjoyed it more if I wasn't there? No, I already had 4 boyfriends before you got there, a couple of them twice, and I already felt like a piece of meat that was just being used. I got there at 20 minutes past 7, and the party didn't start until 7. How did you manage to do so much so quickly? The party started at 6 when Joe and Ben got there early. Al showed up at 6:45 and I had everything ready by 7. What's going on with Norm? I asked. Not so much. We live together and he keeps asking me to marry him, but I don't love him, so I always say no. I really like him. I like him very much, but a marriage without love will not last long, and I know it. I had what I needed, and I threw it away. Now I'm wondering if there's any way I can get it back. I don't think so, Katie. Too much water has flown under the bridge. She finished her wine, stood up, and left the table. A minute later, purse in hand, she walked out the front door. It wasn't until 5 minutes later that I realized she didn't have a car. She rode with me from Norma's house. I grabbed my keys and went to drop her off, but she was nowhere to be seen. I drove around looking for her, but she disappeared. The next day, while I was washing the dishes after dinner, the doorbell rang, and when I walked up to the door, I saw Norm standing there. I invited him in, pointed to the sofa, and went to get 2 bottles of beer from the refrigerator. I gave him one, sat down on the chair opposite him, and waited. He took a sip of his drink and then asked, "Have you ever been in love?" "Once." "What's happened?" "You know the answer to this question. You were at her birthday party." "How long did it take you to come to your senses?" "I've never tried it." "And yet, you don't give her a chance." "Too much is left behind." "Like what?" "The way she left." "What has happened since then?" "By has happened since, are you talking about her sex life?" I shrugged. "You didn't have anyone else when she left?" I gave him an angry look, but before I could say anything, he said, "So, she tried to find someone else, but then so did you. Am I right? Or is this a more recent development? Like maybe the night before last?" "Why were you there, Frank?" "It was because you were curious and wanted to see what it was like. Given that, how can you blame her for doing the same thing? All she did was satisfy the curiosity that Bev and Darla aroused in her. I don't know if you liked it or not, but she didn't like it. When she came home last night, I asked her if she wanted to do it again, and she said, "Not in this life." But I'm not here to talk about her birthday. I asked Katie to marry me 5 times, and she always said no. She says she can't marry me because she doesn't love me. She says she only loved one man in her life, and she foolishly let him go, and he won't take her back. Why the hell not, Frank? You still love her? I knew it from the way you looked at her at the party. She made no secret of the fact that she loved you. I have to tell you, Frank, it kills me to be here talking to you. I'm trying to convince you to give her a chance. I want her so much it hurts, but she doesn't want me. She wants you. I care about her, Frank. I care about her enough that I want to see her happy. Give her a chance, Frank. Here's her cell number. Call her. What do you have to lose? Thanks for the beer." And he got up and left. Finishing my beer, I stared at the door. I thought about what he said for a moment and then got up and finished cleaning the kitchen. For the next 2 days, I thought about nothing else. I thought about Katie and what she said, and I thought about what Norm said. I remembered what Mary said. I thought back to the life I had before the day Katie left, and thought about the life I had led since then. The one thing that kept coming back to me was what Norm said. Give her a chance, Frank. Do you have anything to lose? I took the piece of paper Norm gave me with Katie's cell number on it and stared at it for maybe a minute before reaching for the phone. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one.